Hi guys, this is Mrs. Cornett, and in this video I am going to sketch out two circle graphs. So go ahead and grab some paper and your calculator. Sometimes you'll see these types of graphs called circle graphs. Sometimes you'll see pie charts. To my knowledge, there's really no difference between the two. Circle graphs are great. These kind of graphs are great because it gives you a visual picture of all of the data. It doesn't tell you the raw data, but it breaks it down into percentages and gives you just an overall picture. And so the first thing we'll need to do before making a circle graph is to add up all the data points and convert each of those points to a percentage. And so we have a table here about the seasonal amounts of rainfall that a particular city has had. When you add these rainfalls together, 9 plus 18 plus 6 plus 3, is a total of 36. Now, to change each of these to a percent, we are going to make a fraction, data over total, and then times that fraction by 100. That's what we're going to do for each time. And so, for example, the first one is 9 over 36, and then multiply that by 100. This is our statistics unit, so you can use a calculator. When you multiply the fraction 9/36 times 100, you get 25%. Next, we'll take the data point 18 over the total times 100, and that gives you 50%. For fall is 6 over 36, multiply that by 100, and it's a repeating decimal. And so let's go ahead and round it to the nearest whole number, which is 17%. And winter is 3 over 36 times 100, which is also a repeating decimal. So let's round back to 8. Before we sketch out the circle graph, I want you to add the percentages together. We have 25 plus 50 plus 17 plus 8, and that equals 100. So even though we rounded on two of them, it still equals 100 because that is the whole circle. Look at the top right corner of the screen. The way we're going to sketch these percentages is by looking back at these fraction circles. And so the whole number 1, when you're talking about percentages, equals 100%. 1/2, you should know, is 50%. 1/4 is 25%. And then 3/4 is 75%. And so the best way to draw these circle graphs are to use what you know about those 4 standard percents and then just do your best to estimate. And so when I look back at the data, the first thing that sticks out is the 50%. So I am going to draw a line just straight across the circle. You need to label the section of the circle graph. I'm going to say summer 50%. Now I'm going to go on to spring because that's 25%, and that's another common percent that I recognize. So from the middle, I'm going to go straight down to split the other 50% into two parts. It doesn't matter which one you claim for spring, but I'm going to write it over here, spring 25%. Now we have 25% left, which is great because we have 17 and 8 is left. And if you think about it, 17 is double, a little more than double than 8, and so it needs to be larger. And so if we were to imagine if we split this remaining piece into thirds, 8 would need 1/3 and 17 would need 2/3. So maybe something like that. So this bigger piece will be fall at 17%, and the smaller piece will be winter at 8%. We need to create a title, and we could just say seasonal amounts of rainfall. Okay, so here's a word problem talking about discovering spearheads from a river. There's 5 rivers, and it tells us the number of spearheads found from each one, and it says make a circle graph for this data. First thing, I want you to add these together. 21 plus 12 plus 15 plus 34 plus 14 equals 96. And now we're going to go through the same process of converting each of those raw data points into a percentage. And so 21 over 96 times 100, and that equals 21.8. So go ahead and round that one up to 22%. Next, for Blackwater, this will be 12 over 96 times 100, which is 12.5. Let's go ahead and use rounding rules just to round to the nearest whole number. So we'll round that one up to 13. The next river is 15 over 96 times 100. And that's the decimal 15.6. So round that one up to 16%. And the Shannon River is 34 spearheads out of 96. We'll multiply that times 100 to convert it to a percentage. It's 35.41, so we can keep that one. We'll round it back down to 35. And the last river is 14 over 96 times 100 is the decimal 14.58. And let's round that one up to 15. If you're struggling on how I'm taking raw data and turning it into a percentage, please just let me know because I'm working it kind of quickly on this video. Okay, now that we have the percentages, we are ready to sketch this graph. In the bottom left corner, I have those common percentages back down for us to reference. And when I'm faced with numbers like this, where you don't have a 50%, you don't have a 25%, I am going to do my best just to choose numbers that are close to a percent that I'm familiar with. So for example, 22% is really close to 25%. So if I go straight down to the center, and then instead of going straight horizontal, I'm just going to go up just a smidge, and I'm going to call that the Band River at 22%. If I were to continue down and make a straight line here, I know that this section left over is 28% because I've already taken up 22%, and 22 plus 28 is 50%, and I know that half of the circle is 50%. And so if I go back up and look at my percentages, I don't have one that's 28%, but I do know that 16 plus 13 is 29%, and that's super close. And so starting from the center, instead of going straight down, I'm going to go off to the left just a little bit. Now this section is going to represent 29, and then 13 and 16 are almost equal, but 16 is slightly larger. So I'll do my best to try to create one that's a little bit larger than the other one. And we'll say this is Ernie at 16%, and then Blackwater at 13%. All right, so now we have two left. We have 35% and 15%, and then we have roughly 49% of the graph left. And so I do know that straight across, that would give me a 25% section. And so I could go slightly smaller, and I could name that one 15%. This is 15%, this is River Barrow, and then I'm going to call this larger piece River Shannon at 35%. Now, we didn't do this at the beginning of this example, but let's go back and add these percentages together. 22 plus 13 plus 16 plus 35 plus 15, it is 101. And here's why. Because we decided to round up instead of just keeping it exactly at the decimal percentage that it should have been. And so that's why it's 101 instead of just 100, but that's okay. Okay, last thing is to come up with a title, and I am going to use this last phrase right here in the word problem, bronze spearheads in Irish rivers. Okay, those were the only two examples that I was going to do on this video, so please let me know if you have any questions.